Okay, my friend Arthur sent this question. It's quite a difficult question. It's quite a profound topic, right? When we're talking about non-duality and mahamudra and that sort of thing. It's not going to be easy. But he says, all right, I have one question. Is non-duality, mahamudra, just a sense that everything will be all right, regardless of anything? Well, there's a short answer to this, and that's no. Non-duality and mahamudra are not a sense in any way. When we say sense, what do we mean? Well, we can be sort of aware of things, we can sense feelings in a room, but in general, the senses are only relevant to dualistic perception. And this is often where people go wrong. That we think we can focus on an object and for it to still be non-duality, but that's mistaken. So the question is, well, what's the difference between non-duality and duality? Well, the reality is non-duality, and our mistaken perception is duality. We objectify these things that arise to our sense perceptions, and then we have the sense of being an observer or the subjective element in that interaction. But I'm not going to go into this sort of depth of this in terms of what is duality and what is non-duality, what's mahamudra, etc. I'm going to answer this more simply. So this, what we call mahamudra, or the recognition of non-dual wisdom, is not a sense or a notion. For example, in the way the question is worded, it seems like what he's saying is that if you have this kind of belief or this feeling that everything will be all right, then that itself is mahamudra meditation. That's not mahamudra meditation. Really, that's just a kind of inclination. And there are various things that could induce you into this state, right? For example, you could be very nervous, very worked up, and then somebody could get you to relax by talking to you. So you could be induced into this feeling that, oh, everything will be okay. You think something horrible is going to happen, and then you're convinced that things aren't as bad as they sound. You know, cognitive therapists, psychotherapists will use techniques to get their clients to relax and let go of their clinging. But this has nothing to do with mahamudra or what non-duality is. Mahamudra itself, we say the meditation of mahamudra, is merely recognition. That's what it's called. So what this is based on is recognizing the way things abide. So this non-dual wisdom, non-referential compassion, this luminosity, or as it's called bliss emptiness, the view in Dzogchen, is the natural way things abide, 24/7, unchanging. And the problem is that we relate to our experiences through this veil of dualism. What is that? Well, that's this veil that is constructed by the mistaken belief in a self. So we get this notion of me and mine, and based on that, we develop this karmic intention, which is called formations. And based on having this karmic intention, what we do is we make acts of body, speech, and mind. And we relate to our environment in a mistaken way, and we react to it, or we're proactive in that environment, and we create further causes for suffering in the future. Also further causes for experiencing well-being. Really what we call the ultimate truth, non-dual wisdom, mahamudra, is that state which goes beyond happiness and suffering. So what it's taught is that it is this non-abiding in samsara nor nirvana. So neither of these two, abiding in neither samsara or nirvana. But it's not like you can just choose not to abide in samsara or nirvana. It's not like that. What you need to do is you need to gain recognition of how things are. And that's not an intellectual or conceptual understanding. That's a visceral experience that arises in meditation. And once you have that, then these other things don't matter. Whether or not thoughts arise, how you think, how you feel, how you perceive, are not the point. You merely recognize the true way things are. And on the basis of that, then as a consequence, you give rise to this feeling that everything will be all right, or this kind of what we call contentment, being easily satisfied, experience of bliss, clarity, non-thought, all arise on the basis of that recognition. But it's not like we can try to generate these feelings in order to gain mahamudra meditation. That's the exact opposite way around. And this is in general what we do in the Buddha Dharma. We go back to front. As I said many times before, we try to start at the top and work our way down. Or we go back to front. What do I mean by back to front? Well, there are these experiences of well-being, being okay with things. This is what we call acceptance. There's bliss, clarity, and non-thought. When those things arise in our meditation, we identify them, we objectifize them, and then we try to focus on them and make it an object of our meditation. And that's exactly backwards. Because these things arise as a consequence of resting in the recognition of non-duality. So on the basis of that, recognizing how things are, remaining within that, then these experiences of well-being, that everything will be all right, except whatever you want to call it, arise in consequence. But somebody who is resting in non-dual wisdom, mahamudra, dzogchen, has no objectivization of these experiences. These experiences don't sort of pop up and then we think, oh look, that's a good result from my meditation. It's not like that. It's the same whatever you experience in this kind of what we call Vajra-like samadhi. You know, it's the highest level of meditation. When you're within that, you're resting within recognition of how things are. That true nature of how things are is a non-dual state. Therefore, there is no subject-object dichotomy. So he goes on, he says, like a subliminal hopefulness or acceptance. So I've covered this, right? We talk about subliminal hopefulness, it's a subconscious acceptance. Well, acceptance is a characteristic of resting correctly. It's not what we're looking for. That makes it so every experience has this equanimity. Okay, well, emptiness, non-duality, mahamudra, don't make it so experience has equanimity. Equanimity is the true nature of phenomena. Equanimity is the way things are. Yeah, it's not like the way things are creates equanimity. Equanimity is a way we describe the way things naturally are. But you have to understand, we don't understand this, right? I mean, we can logically accommodate this idea of equanimity, that there is no good, there is no bad, etc. We can read books about it. But when it comes down to it, we don't understand this point. And why is that? Because we have very strong ideas about good and bad. And we have a very strong concept of self. It's absolutely immutable. I mean, even in deep sleep, although we have nothing arise to our perceptions, if somebody starts poking you with a pin when you're in deep sleep, eventually you will wake up and you'll be like, what are you doing? Because our sense of self, me and mine, is so strong that even when we're in this perceptionless state, that something sort of knocks us out of that perceptionless state. And that is our fundamental ignorance. That's our clinging to self. So for us, the problem isn't the way things abide. For us, the problem is that we have a mistaken way of thinking about things, a mistaken way of interacting and relating to our experience. And that's because we don't have recognition. But initially, you have to develop understanding. I mean, I've said this many times before. You need this understanding first, and then by contemplating or resting in that understanding, then experiences start to arise. And they're like glimpses, and you identify them. At some point, you gain actual recognition. So when you have that actual recognition, then you know how things are, you know how to recognize it. It's not something that is unstable. So people will talk about, you know, having realized the true nature, and then they will also say, but it comes and goes. That's kind of a bit odd, right? For example, you know, my brother, I recognize my brother. It's not like sometimes I recognize him and sometimes I don't. I mean, if I bang myself on the head, you know, or if I took lots of LSD, I might not recognize my brother anymore. But in general, it's not something that's unstable. Once you have recognition, the problem isn't instability. The problem is the strength of our habitual tendencies. So if we have very, very strong habitual tendencies, then those kind of override. What they do is they make us sort of forget what we're doing, what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah, it doesn't create experience, it doesn't create these experiences of equanimity. Equanimity is how it is. We just don't understand equanimity. We don't experience equanimity. We're very, very much biased to the nth degree in no small way whatsoever. And there's no point in trying to kid yourself on that you've realized equanimity. I mean, all you have to do is go lie out in the street, on a busy road. No, I'm not telling you to do that, right? That's just kind of an example, right? This is YouTube. People do all kinds of crazy things. So please don't do this. This is just an example, right? I'm not asking you to do this. I'm just asking you to conceptualize what it's like. You know, when I was young, actually, I used to like going out and lying in the road. And it was this kind of feeling of being a bit daring. But you know, it's dangerous and you could get killed. And if you get killed, it's not my fault. Anyway, we don't have equanimity. We have a sense of good and bad. And we can tell why. Because when a car comes rushing at us, we jump out of the way. If somebody even suggests we're not perfect, it upsets us. You know, you can make a comment to somebody that isn't really being critical. Well, if we don't kind of, butter people up, they become uncomfortable sometimes. We're very kind of small-minded, so we get upset very easily just by words, let alone by deeds, actions, etc. Even if we think somebody has a bad opinion of us, that upsets us. So this is really telling, This shows us that we don't have this view. So he goes on, because I can't understand how non-duality is not a cultivation of something in the mind. Okay, cultivation of something is dual. That's a dualistic process. You can understand that, right? Cultivation of something cannot be as assumed within non-duality. Cultivation of something is a subject-object dichotomy. It involves an action being done on an object, of something in the mind. Something in the mind is dualistic. That's a dualistic process. This abiding within something else is a form of duality, not non-duality. And this is a really difficult and a really deep topic. And most people, I can tell by what they say, that they don't understand this point. When we talk about non-duality, we're talking about that which transcends all conceptual elaborations. And part of these conceptual elaborations are things like singularity, plurality, it's coming and going and all these sort of things, arising and ceasing. And for us, basically, we only have duality. We only relate to things with duality. The question is how are we able to develop this insight or understanding of non-duality? Well, that's through our meditation, and primarily it has to be done with a teacher who kind of knows you quite well and also has to have some level of skill and also their own level of understanding. With that process, it's possible to gain slight insight, these kind of glimpses of how things are. And they're not things that we understand. Usually when this understanding arises, it's something that's quite obscure to us. But eventually that can turn into a valid recognition. And with recognition is not just conceptual understanding. Conceptual understanding arises with it, along with it.